Hello everyone, welcome to GreenVest Makerspace. My name is Mac, and today I'm going to be making a custom kitchen riser. One of my friends reached out to me and said that they have limited space in their kitchen and they needed to start to stack some of their appliances on their kitchen counters. So one appliance is going to go down here, and then the other appliance is going to sit on top of this. So specific dimensions, very unique to this one customer, one of my friends. It's got some leather inlays you can see there on both sides, and some decorative leather pieces on the ends that I'll get into in the video. But yeah, stick around, let's have some fun.
All right, here in the Shaper 3D app, just briefly, I brought in images of the counter space that we're working with and the dimensions. So the customer wanted the kettle and its warmer sitting above this scale on their kitchen counter. So that's what the riser is ultimately for. And after kicking around a handful of designs, basically just copy and pasting different designs, going on down the line, I settled on this one here. It's essentially a top piece connected to two legs that span the length of the top, connected with dados on either end, with leather inlays on either side, and also these leather decorative pieces on the ends. I've intentionally skipped over the milling steps, but if you are interested in learning how to mill your lumber, feel free to check out this video here. This is me cleaning up glue with a scraper after I've glued two panels together. This is now the piece of stock that I'll use to make the kitchen riser. It's super nice to have this Shaper 3D app for the iPad out in the shop while I'm working. Good for referencing dimensions or making on-the-fly design changes. I probably get a 1/2 inch of jointer snipe at the tail end of each jointer pass. I'm not entirely sure what the problem is. It's on my to-do list to figure out what's going on there and try to fix it. But until I do, I've just been dealing with it and end up oversizing all of my pieces and then chopping off the snipe at the end. One of the benefits of using a marking knife is it essentially has zero width, which allows you to find the mark you made with the tip of the blade much more accurately than, say, a pencil. Probably takes me 20 minutes to make a small adjustment to my dado stack. So at this point, I was really hoping the second go round would fit. It did not. For how fussy and time-consuming a dado stack can be, it sure does make a nice cut. I had this circular cut out from a different project that I was working on. Its size didn't match the dimension that I wanted for the arc on the legs, but since it was the largest circle I had lying around the shop, I used it and updated the design accordingly. Yeah, so taking this circle and putting it at the top where I marked it, and hoping that it was tangent to that line, didn't end up working out too well. There's a ton more room on this side. There's like 1 5/16 versus 1 1/16 on this end. So instead, I think what I'll do is, that is 1.19 inches on either side. So I will check this chart. 1.19, 1.19, close enough, 3/16. So 1 3/16 I will mark on either end here. And hopefully that point, and that point will give us a good reference. So now we got 1 3/16 over here, 1 3/16 right there, and the top of the arc, which is half of this width, which is 1.25 inches. And now we get a nice good reference. 3 points with which to reference on our circle here. That's way better. All right. When I started sanding, I made the mistake of sanding the leg pieces, which I should not have done. I only did it a little bit, but the reason I'm bummed I did it is because this was perfectly flush, because I had the dado stack nicely dialed in, but because I sanded a little bit on one side of the leg, you can see it's not perfectly flush like it was before. So I'll probably clean that up after I glue it with the scraper, but I didn't need to do that. I could have just sanded this side and then glued it together, and then worried about finishing or sanding this piece as well as this edge once it was all glued together. But I think it'll be all right. We'll clean it up later. Try to remove those glue marks with a scraper. Using the offcuts, I'm going to clamp it in here. It's actually working pretty nicely. Future Mac would like to inform you that you could not be more wrong about what you just said. Why don't we practice some end grain planing before we ruin our piece here? So this is an offcut. See, look what I'm doing to it. Glad I practiced. We'll have to figure out a different solution. How about a different plane that's perhaps more sharp? Still kind of just chews it up. Let's try sanding.
It works, it's just boring. Boring and safe is better than exciting and unsafe, in my opinion. Oh yeah. Planing with the grain works just fine. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. So I've just got a slight rock or unevenness in the feet. I don't know if you can hear that. These two sides are low, these two sides are high. So I double-sided taped this 150 grit sandpaper to a completely flat surface, the top of the table saw, and it seems to be working. More material is coming off on the two high feet, which is what I want. And I think we're slowly improving, so let's keep doing this and see what happens. Still there, but I think it's getting smaller. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Nothing. Awesome. I'm going to try to put a taper on these legs, just a slight taper on each one, 1, 2, 3, 4. But I want to make sure that I practice first, and I'm going to do it with a hand plane. So my thought is, here's a piece of scrap with the same type of wood. I mocked up the leg, and there's the taper that I want to add. So I'm going to try to remove just that much material with a hand plane and see if my planes are sharp enough and my hand planing skills are up to the task. We'll see how it goes. But I want to practice here to make sure I don't mess up here. I think it's working so far. So using just a block plane, I've chamfered just that part so far. I'll keep going and see if I can do this well enough to keep it. That's pretty darn good. It went better than I expected it to. Yeah, I like it. So now I've got my 4 tapers marked out. Now it's time to just cut them with the hand plane. Look at what just happened to my camera mount. Good grief. You're only going to get crummy camera angles from here on out. I'll be the first to tell you that my hand planing skills are not the finest, and I haven't done a YouTube deep dive onto how to actually hand plane, but so I'm kind of just winging it here. But I have found that if you follow the grain as best you can, that really helps the end results. And also twisting the plane in different directions to help find where the grain is along its direction. That has also helped improve the quality of the final finish. And it's not perfect by any means, but some passes are cleaner than others, and I'm getting pretty good shavings here. So as you can see, it's working, albeit slow and sometimes rough in patches, but I'll take it. I'm also going to finish this surface with sandpaper after I plane it too. So yeah, it's a pretty fun, satisfying process, really. No surprise. And yeah, I seem to be getting slightly better at it as I go along, so that's always good. Right, so there's the final post-planing.
found hand planing to be very satisfying. You know, you don't have a power tool screaming in your ears or in your lungs. It's just peaceful, it's satisfying, it's forgiving. Like if you make a mistake on one pass of the plane, you can clean it up by slightly changing the angle of the plane and going at it again. It's not perfect, or at least my planing wasn't perfect, but like I said, I'll clean that up with sandpaper. And as I get better, hopefully I have to do less of that cleanup. But yeah, I like it. A lot of fun. I'll try to include hand plane work more in my future projects because I found it so satisfying. So I had the idea, instead of doing a wood inlay, doing a leather inlay, just for decorative purposes. And it worked out pretty well. These aren't permanently situated yet, but I'll stain it, or I'll put oil on it, and then the last thing I'll do is I'll put these leather strips in there. I'll glue them down, and that'll be it. But I think it looks pretty cool. Remember when I said that I thought the scraper was doing a good job of removing the glue on the top surface? Well, after I put tung oil on it, look what reared its ugly head. That foot is good. Gross, gross. So I figure I have 4 options to try and remove those blemishes. More scraping, sandpaper, hand plane, or if worse comes to worse, put the damn thing in a chop saw and take off just a hair of each face to completely remove the glue seepage down into the end grain of the wood. Wish me luck. So I put tung oil on this last night, and watch what happens when I try to scrape away the glue residue from the end grain. So there's the stain. It just hasn't fully cured in there in the end grain, which tells me that I tend to think I'm gonna have a hard time getting deep enough to completely remove the wood glue that has seeped in and down the end grain, but I'll keep doing this a couple times and see how it goes. Gotta be careful of the end. I can glue that back, hopefully. Still probably getting a mixture of wood fibers and stain at this point. It's true what they say about end grain, that it's like a straw that just drinks up any moisture that you put down through it, including glue. It looks like that's lightening up on the left side there. It kind of disappears for a second and then the oil reappears. Yep, it's like I hadn't even done any scraping. It's just really down in there. So I think I'm gonna take this thing over to the chop saw and just take a sliver off of that end. What's the worst that could happen? Still there. Look at that crap. Are you kidding me? Okay, what about instead of sanding or scraping or chop sawing off our mistakes, what if I just cover them up with leather? Huh? Could work. I don't quite love just a straight down or a 90-degree right there. I might change that shape to make it a little bit more decorative, but this is not a half bad solution, especially when I'm already gonna be having a leather detail in that inlay right there. So I'll also try not to get oil on the leather, but I might try to fuss around with a decorative piece right there, and we'll see where this takes me. But I like this better than just shortening this thing indefinitely until that stupid glue is removed.
So here's what it ended up looking like after gluing on the leather end pieces to cover up the gluing disaster on the end grain. I think it turned out pretty cool. These additional end pieces kind of just add a nice little decorative touch with the leather. I glued them on using this barge contact cement, and I wasn't sure if it was going to adhere okay because, for one, this is end grain, and for two, it had already been tongue oiled. I wasn't sure if the combination of end grain and tongue oil would adhere with leather, but I did a practice, and I wasn't going anywhere, so that wasn't an issue. So I was happy about that, but in the end, it turned out all right. I think the lesson to be learned here is to control your gluing, especially around the end grain. Also, don't be afraid to try new materials like leather to cover up your mistakes, or other things you have laying around. Try to get creative and continue on the general path that you're going. But if things go awry, don't be afraid to get creative and try new things and new techniques.